Within the circles of woke, there's always internal conflict because there is a hierarchy none of them like to recognize, especially since facts are racist and evidence is a part of white supremacy, if you listen to them. Now, in my last video, I talked about how the woke-tarded are suffering the consequences for their woke talking points and decisions, and how those consequences have come in the form of Wakanda activity spreading to the Pleasantville woke utopias of America, aka the hood violence is spreading into the suburbs. Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about how their woke decisions and talking points has spread into comedy and how it has exposed the hierarchy even further. Now, in this situation, you have the comedian Dave Chappelle, who is a pro-wokian himself based on his personal politics and based on his decision where he's willing to even meet with these transgender Netflix employees that walked out on their jobs. And he's willing to talk to other members of the so-called trans community who all want Dave Chappelle's head. And the reason why I said this decision to meet with them is woke is because he wouldn't be doing this if a church community found his jokes to be offensive. He wouldn't be doing this if the poor white people he talked about was offended. Hell, he even wouldn't be doing this willing to sit down bullshit if members of the so-called black community were offended. He wouldn't be willing to meet with them. And in fact, it wouldn't even be made a big deal like this is being made a big deal out of, especially by Netflix employees, knowing Netflix history. Because just last year, Netflix distributed and still platforms a softcore child porn called CUTIES, a movie that auditioned over 600 little girls between the ages of 11, 12, and 13 years old. And out of those 600 audition videos that I'm sure is making its rounds among pedos worldwide, especially within their dark web, but out of those 600, they chose 4 little girls. Now, let me give you a brief description of this movie for those who may not be familiar. And remember, this is a movie that not one Netflix employee walked out on the company over, trans or otherwise. Now, Cuties is a movie where the lead star is a 11-year-old immigrant from an African country who now lives in France. And she joins a dance team full of little girls that wear skimpy clothing and twerk and do other sexual dances in front of adults. I mean, this movie not only has twerk scenes with these little kids, but it also includes seduction scenes where they're gyrating in front of adult men, taking nudes. And again, no big outcry over this. In fact, if you criticize this pedo movie, you got labeled as a QAnon supporter or alt-right or just some conspiracy theorist racist. And they injected that racist bullshit into the conversation. You know, number one, they always do it, but number two, in this case, they did it because the woman who directed this pedo film was an African woman. Which brings me to the hierarchy of woke. You see, Dave Chappelle, as a heterosexual black male, is near the bottom rung of the woke hierarchy. Because above him is that black female and members of the alphabet gang and white libtards. And right now, his issue, Dave Chappelle, is that he's a heterosexual black woke male who doesn't realize he's at the bottom, but maybe he's finding that out right now. Because They're not at the very bottom because just below them, the people who are at the very bottom is children. Children are at the very bottom of the woke hierarchy because they don't give two shits about kids. I mean, the mainstream media will create outrage over Me Too women, over trans lives matter stuff, over gay pride stuff. Hell, they'll even incite a riot over a George Floyd in the name of Black Lives Matter. But what they will never do, what they will never incite anything over, is the sexual abuse and exploitation of children, which is continuously proven, especially with this situation with Netflix and Dave Chappelle. I mean, hell, you even have the Netflix CEO apologizing about defending Dave Chappelle and his stand up special. But this very same CEO, he defended that pedo film CUTIES. Once again, showing that children are the least protected amongst the woke. And if anyone is familiar with Hollywood's history with children, then you know that they've always been pro pedophilia. Since the days of Baby Burlesque with Shirley Temple in the 1930s of Hollywood, they've always supported pedophilia. But the pedophilia that goes unquestioned, the type of pedophilia, I should say, that goes unquestioned by the mainstream is LGBTQ based pedophilia. I mean, I looked at a story, a case involving an 18-year-old high schooler by the name of Orlando Perez, who murdered a 37-year-old man who was posing as a woman and tricked the boy into having sex with him. Now, we know if a high school age female was somehow tricked by a man into having sex with an older man who, let's say, I don't know, pretended to be a high school student, then the media would be calling it what it is, rape. And if she killed the man, the media and people online would be defending her. But most people that reacted to this Orlando Perez story, they wanted the boy locked up forever. They wanted him to rot and die. And that's the type of energy that Dave Chappelle is now feeling. And him being black and him being woke is not going to protect him. Not going to protect him at all because he dare to step out of his place and comment on a demographic that's higher on the totem pole, higher on the woke hierarchy than he is. Hell, you even have your pro Black Lives Matter celebrities coming out in defense of those Netflix employees who walked out on their jobs, demanding Chappelle be canceled. You have celebrities like Elliot Page, aka Ellen Page, the actress chick who recently changed her appearance to look like a little teen boy. Wanda Sykes, the so-called female comedian who loved them white women. You think Wanda Sykes will understand since she's a so-called comedian, but again, she's a female comedian, so she's barely a comedian, obviously. You have Ava DuVernay coming out against Chappelle. I like to refer to her as Oprah's secret boo thing, who's all about pushing the feminist shit and the LGBT. And again, she's pro BLM, but not above those agendas that she pushed. Lily Wachowski, formerly of the Wachowski brothers, both of them who changed themselves, and they're known for being the creators of The Matrix. Shout out to Sophia Stewart, by the way, the black female who is claimed they stole it from her. But her story gets no attention. Barely anyone knows about her or her claim. And it's just another example of selective outrage and selective Black Lives Mattering. And there were many more celebs who stand with this trans outrage over Dave Chappelle's stand-up. But most of these celebs are really pro this issue because they themselves like to transform their own children. I mean, they're so committed to this agenda that they have committed to transforming their own children. And most of the kids, obviously, are male children that they like to transform. I mean, for example, you have Charlize Theron, who adopted two boys from Africa, and she's changed them both. I mean, she even made a statement to fucking Essence magazine, which is promoting this shit, saying, what she say, black woman put her in her place about raising two girls, even though the people she's calling girls are boys, because she stated she knew her son was her daughter when he was 3 years old. 3 fucking years old. But this is the agenda. This is why they're fighting so hard for it. This fucking sick shit. They're lucky all they're receiving is jokes from Dave Chappelle, because they should be receiving a hell of a lot more. I mean, you even had Michelle Obama. She was doing an Instagram live with Dwayne Wade's son, encouraging him, talking about sexuality with a 12-year-old kid on Instagram live as the former first lady. But again, they probably have something in common because, people allege Michelle is a dude. But again, they don't want negative talk against it, because with more negative talk, even if it's just in the form of stand up, the more knowledge people will have about this shit that a lot of people don't know or don't seem to know what's going on. I mean, if Chappelle talks about it, then people could research and find out about the drag queen story hour and how it's filled with pedophiles that they put into children's areas. I mean, blatantly pushing their demonic beliefs onto children while they're doing their little cross-dress story time. And then you have sick fucking lip-tarded parents sit there and support it. You even had one expose his dick to preschoolers, and nothing happened to him. More negative talk will bring up more research where people will find out about liberal parents sitting around while a tranny lap dancers perform a lap dance on a little girl. Or they'll find out about a 11-year-old boy called Desmond the Amazing who was dancing for grown men in a club for money. And then it got promoted on Disney through ABC. And it's just a laundry list of other shit, from puberty blockers that actually block the natural organic process of puberty. And you got schools encouraging that. You got schools encouraging drag shows where kids are giving adult men lap dances. That shit happened in Kentucky. You got schools taking elementary kids to gay bars, handing out books to kids with dick sucking in it. And some of this shit is, yes, even happening in Texas, because Texas is full of, Cody Nixon type parents who, state they're conservative and all, but they're really just big pussies. They're bigger pussies than libtards, because this shit is how libtards get down, but conservatives claim to be against it, but all they do is talk tough and still get ran over all the time. I mean, so yeah, Dave Chappelle is up against that. A protected class who's allowed to push all types of shit directly to children out in the open. And they even have parents willingly sacrificing their own kids' minds and bodies to this protected class. And in return, they don't get called a bigot. That's how pressed people are about being called a bigot. They don't even invest in protecting their fucking kids. But sadly, it's the pedophiles that run the world. I mean, Epstein is one of thousands of others that go untalked about. And like they say, nothing new under the sun. I mean, what's happening now is what occurred in ancient Greek and Rome. It's just the same shit all over again, with the many idol figures now being celebrities who are supported by an industry full of pedos who peddle the pedophile bullshit, which Hollywood's history has shown. And Dave Chappelle, just like many others, are discovering that on the hierarchy of woke, they're below mentally ill pedos who believe they are a righteous social justice cause. And this selective outrage, especially at Netflix that made that pedo film, is just further evidence of said hierarchy. Because they are outraged over this, but be silent on the Netflix CUTIES pedo film. I mean, it was even recently discovered that they somehow messed with the search for the term to quell some of the backlash that it did receive. And again, even though you see Dave Chappelle saying he won't bend the knee, the fact that he still said that, well, he's not going to make any more jokes until we all laugh, and he's willing to have a sit down, that's just evidence of him worrying about his position. Because again, even if they don't officially know, they know in their mind who they have to bow down to, or be hesitant to. Because again, if he was talking about poor white people or niggas, he wouldn't be worried at all. But that's how the game goes when you're playing these woke games. I mean, hell, it was one of the reasons why he gave, at least, for going off into Africa that one time. I wonder which country he's about to go to now, because he got paparazzi even harassing him over this shit. But again, no outrage like this at all over Netflix promoting CUTIES and supporting CUTIES. I mean, fucking CUTIES won an award at the Sundance Film Festival last year. They awarded a pedo movie, because that's what it was. That's what it was. But again, if you're a hetero male, a part of the woke cult, then you're a dumbass who likes being near last place. Because every single time, even if you're a comedian, you speak out of turn, this is the backlash that you will get.